Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Science Chat Show. Today, we have with us Saylee Jangam, who's currently a PhD scholar at Imperial College London. And following the ritual of breaking the ice with the audiences themselves, I'm going to ask Saylee to talk to you and tell you guys about herself, her family background, her education background, and anything that she thinks would make her friends with you. Hi, Saylee.
Hi, Navjot. Thanks for having me. So just to give you a quick introduction to myself, my name is Saylee. I was born in Mumbai, grew up in Hong Kong, and have studied in Pune. And since 2014, I've been in the UK. I did my bachelor's degree at the University of Sheffield, and I studied bioengineering with a year in industry. So I worked in industry for a year. And following my bachelor's, I came back to India to get more research experience, and I worked at the Indian Institute of Science, where I've met Navjot. And following that year, I came back to the UK to pursue my PhD in bioengineering at Imperial College London.
Great. After struggling with these technical issues for 30 minutes that we have been, it's great to see you all upbeat and active to get into the session. So thanks for being courteous. And now that you've talked about your bachelor's in biotech at Sheffield, you also know how the education system works in India and how bachelor programs work in India. Were there any peculiar differences that you found in terms of maybe the academics or the way, the entire way in which bachelor programs are approached? And how do you think that your experience at Sheffield helped you sort of build your career path from there on?
Sure. So at Sheffield, I studied bioengineering. And the thing is, with bioengineering, it's a very new and upcoming field. It's a very interdisciplinary course. So I took courses in mechanical engineering, in computer science, in control systems engineering. So it was kind of a mixture of a broad kind of engineering degree, but with specializations in like human anatomy and molecular biology. In my second year, I got to specialize in tissue engineering and biomaterials. So I had the option and flexibility of choosing my subjects. And I think that's something you don't always get at an early stage in India, especially in bachelor programs.
And also that ability to specialize. But when you said that you did courses from the mechanical engineering department and others, these were choices that you were making, or this is how the program was designed for everyone?
The first year, they basically prescribe you courses. And so it's a wide variety of courses in all these different departments. The second year, you get some core courses, but these are only half the courses, and the other half you get to choose based on the specialization that you choose. So there are 3 specializations at Sheffield, and obviously this changes from university to university. At Sheffield, we had medical devices, tissue engineering and biomaterials, and the third was biomedical engineering. That was a broader stream. So out of these 3 streams, I was more interested in the biological side, in growing artificial organs and everything like that. So I went for tissue engineering and biomaterials. That was my specialization. So in that year, I took courses in mechanical engineering, in cell and molecular biology. I had anatomy courses where, I was next to medical students, like looking and dissecting human bodies. So I had the whole kind of wide range of experience, and it was very hands-on. That's something I think is really special about courses in the UK, that you have a lot of practicals and you're given responsibility from the start about how to kind of design experiments, and you're kind of given that out of the box thinking skill where you're not just told what to do, but you're asked to like justify why you're doing something in the lab. And so you get that kind of mindset of a researcher from an early stage. And another difference is the fact that a lot of the assessment in India is based on exams and project as well, from what I hear. But I think here it's exams, projects, essays, but it's also group work. So they put a lot of emphasis on group work. And a lot of the times, like, you're put into groups to, work on a project or work on a practical together. And you have to basically not just, focus on the technical aspects of the task, but also communication, different working styles, how to meet a deadline together. And I think that prepares you for a working environment, for example, in industry. And also what we have here is peer assessment. So when you work in a group, your peers can assess you. And so you can't just, put your hands up and not do anything in the group, which might be the case in some other countries, but you also have to, be amicable and be approachable for your peers and actually do the work, as otherwise the score is distributed unevenly if your peers think you didn't contribute enough. So definitely assessment, but also the approach to education, I think, is very different in the UK. And
Do you also feel that all these experiences that you got to look at different, streams of mechanical engineering, anatomy, and things like that, that also sort of helped you discover what is it that you really like? Because
yeah,
generally you are put into a prescribed course format, and then all of you are just studying the same subject. So 80 people can't like the same thing.
yeah,
So did that help in that
yeah.
sense also?
Yeah, absolutely. So I studied biomaterials and tissue engineering, and by the end of my degree, I actually realized that that is something that's really cool, but something I don't necessarily want to dedicate like my research to. So I started getting more into sensors at that point because I was involved in a competition called iGEM. And I know we'll talk about that a little later, but iGEM is essentially a synthetic biology competition where you're put into, or rather you choose to be in teams in your university and you compete at an international level. And my iGEM project was developing a sensor for tackling antibiotic resistance. And so that's how I got introduced to the sensors world. And I found that really interesting. The fact that you can make something that essentially it guides decision making for doctors or for patients at the point of care. So I found that really interesting. And although I was specializing in tissue engineering, I then acquired skills in sensor development and got more interested in that, and then decided to pursue my PhD in that.
Okay.
I definitely think it helps you understand, gives you kind of a big picture outlook of your field by taking different courses, because you get introduced to many more things that way. And that's how you can then make a more calculated decision about what would interest you and what you think is important.
I agree. Great. So since you brought IGM up, so there's a lot of competitions and I wouldn't say extracurricular, but scientific events and conferences that you participate in. So you've been in IGM, you've been in the GapSummit, and then you were the vice president for GapSummit in 2020 this year that just wrapped up a while ago. What is the kind of thought process that you have when you say that you want to participate in these kind of events? And then again, you have already talked about the sort of professional contribution that they have, but if there's anything more that you want to talk about.
Yeah, sure. So I think the reason I chose to do GapSummit is because I was actually attending the GapSummit in 2018 as a delegate. So this was my final year of my undergrad at Sheffield. And the GapSummit is basically an intergenerational conversation platform for current leaders, that is, speakers who come to the GapSummit who are like CEOs of big pharma. We had the chief scientist of the World Health Organization come this year. Basically, it's a conversation platform between current leaders of today and people who have the potential to be leaders of tomorrow. So the GapSummit brings together young people with these speakers, or rather leaders of today, and allows them to have a conversation about the biggest gaps in biotechnology over generally 3 days, but this year it was 5 days. And through this, they develop the kind of background knowledge that they need to kind of understand what the biggest gaps are from the current leaders and how they can tackle it in their own careers. So it's an inspirational event. It's also a great networking opportunity. And during the conference as well, and prior to the conference rather, you get put into teams within groups of 5 delegates, and you get to basically come up with the business proposal that you can pitch at the conference. So it's more of an entrepreneurial kind of training as well for people who haven't really been involved in startups, because obviously biotech is an industry that booms due to its startups, right? And so it's kind of a training program / a great educational opportunity / a good networking opportunity. So I got involved in it as a delegate in 2018, like I said, and I found it an amazing opportunity. And I had events experience from cultural activities that I organized at Sheffield. And so I thought it was the perfect combination of my interest in biotech and bioengineering and my interest in events organization. It just kind of came together. And so I thought it would be a good learning opportunity for me to learn more about the gaps in biotech by organizing it, because as the organizer, you're in charge of basically curating the entire event. So myself and 2 other leads of the conference, we basically we did a lot of background research. We came up with all the gaps. Some of them were taken from the past. Some of them were taken from ideas that we got from our advisory board. So our advisory board consists of a Nobel Prize laureate, some other professors at Cambridge, some industrialists as well. And we have conversations with them regularly about what should we bring to the conference that would be most relevant for our delegates. And so through these conversations, through our own background research, through our own personal experiences and professional experiences, we come up with 8 gaps that we think are like broad enough that we can have conversations around. And then we go out and find the best speakers that can speak to these gaps, that can bring their ideas and like they can bring their own experience about what they're doing in these gaps to fill these gaps. And so through this, I thought I would gain a lot of knowledge, broad, big picture knowledge, which I have. And I decided to do it because I had time on my hands as well. I was at the time at IISc. I was a research assistant in Bhushan Thole's lab. And I had time on my hands. I was also applying for PhD. So I thought it was a great way to connect with professors back here in the UK, just to stay connected to the UK as well, because it was it was where I wanted to come back to. And yeah, just to grow my network, as you said, I think it's really important in today's time and age to kind of stay connected with people and have these conversations, because at the end of the day, they're just human beings. And, you can't just have conversations with these really successful people and it doesn't feel like, that they're any different at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine how productive those brainstorming sessions would be, where you're trying to find these gaps out, and that would be so helpful in your future career path, even if you decide not to, be a regular member of GapSummit or other conferences and take a completely different route, but you would just know so much more about things that need to be done. And that's an important skill to have, to be a good professional.
Yeah.
And now that you've talked about the PhD program and being a PhD scholar at Imperial, while you were having all these experiences, what was it that told you that, I need to pursue a PhD program? Not that the fact that you had so much of event management skills, and along with the different kind of curriculum that you had done, you could have been a very good match for industry. But you said that, no, I want to pursue a PhD program. So what were the motivations that sort of told you that?
Sure. So I think I always knew I wanted to pursue a PhD since I was like 16, 17. Because when I was in school, I really enjoyed the sciences. And like I remember, because I did A-levels in Pune, I was in an international school. There was a lot of self-study involved in my 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. We had classes at school, but for the format that is A-levels, there's a lot of self-study and revision involved. I had to teach myself a lot of things. And so I used to rely a lot on like YouTube and a lot on like internet resources to try and teach myself things in addition to my textbooks. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of teaching myself and learning new things. And I was really interested in biology. Like I was almost going to become a doctor. I wanted to study medicine, but then I wanted to innovate at the same time.
So you are going to become a doctor.
And I remember I actually shadowed. Not a medical doctor. Yeah, I was in two minds about whether I wanted to pursue medicine or whether I wanted to pursue biomedical engineering. And I chose to pursue biomedical engineering because I realized that the thing that like excites me about innovation is that I can bring something to healthcare that's new as a doctor, which obviously is extremely important. I'm not downplaying anything in medicine. I'm just saying that I'm more interested in doing something innovative that I can bring new to the field. And so that's why I chose to do biomedical engineering over medicine. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, so ultimately you're saying it's your passion for science that you sort of recognize at an early age, which told you that eventually a PhD is what you would like to do. And then you also had this desire of doing or making innovative solutions. And that's also something you get to do when you get into a research program.
Exactly. And because I did a year in industry as well, like I kind of knew what to expect in industry. I was working in the R&D department of Reckitt Benckiser in the UK.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience. I learned so much about myself as a person during that year, and I made some amazing like friends and colleagues. But at the same time, I don't think that I was satisfied with the role because I wanted to be innovating more. I wanted to be doing something that was actually like saving lives and, making a difference. And so like even throughout my university degree, like because at the back of my mind, I always had, I wanted to do a PhD. I always got involved in research. So I did like research over the summer. Even in Pune, I was working at Venture Center for 2 months between my first and second year. I was working for a startup at VC. Basically, they were doing bone regeneration. So I was doing some initial like validation studies for them. And
Okay.
so I always put myself in like positions where I was doing research just to like test waters, just to see if I liked it. And if I did like it, then what specifically did I like? And of course, IISc played a big part in that as well. I was there for research, right?
Yeah.
And I realized that actually I want to do something that is making a difference in the developing world. So working on infectious diseases, working on AMR, but also I want to do something that is innovative and, you know, something that interests me, which is like sensing and sensors. So I
Mhm.
think being able to work on antibiotic resistance in my PhD and combining my experience from like sensor development, it kind of brings the two together. Um, and so, yeah, I think I always kind of knew that I wanted to do something in academia just because of my desire to innovate. But that just grew a bit stronger and stronger just as I put myself through these experiences.
Mhm. Okay. And you've also been an international student both in your bachelor's and now in your PhD
Yeah.
program. And a lot of students go through this exercise of making their PhD applications and then writing their SOPs and other
Mhm.
emails to the professors, getting financial support. And if you could share details of your journey, what were the things that you thought were the major roadblocks? And how did you gather the skills and solutions required to overcome them? That would be really
Mhm.
helpful for the young audience watching us.
Yeah, sure. So do you want me to talk about my bachelor's experience or my PhD experience?
I would be happy if you talk about both because there would
Okay,
be
so
students who might want to sort of come out for a bachelor's program as well, right?
yeah, so I think with the bachelor's, the most important thing is what you're studying. And I feel like there's so many universities abroad. In the UK, from my experience, there was a lot for me to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you can narrow down based on ranking and course structure, which is really important. But at the same time, I think for a lot of Indian students, it comes down to affordability, right? And
Yeah.
you know, you have to try and look for scholarships, and not all universities offer scholarships specifically for the course you're doing. Scholarships are based on nationality, so they might be applicable for a number of nationalities. So you have to check if it applies for India. And also you have to check whether, you know, there's a lot of like fine kind of print details that you have to check. So it's always best to email the international office and find out if you're eligible for something. Once you have that short list of universities that have your course that you can apply for scholarships to, then you go ahead and make applications. So don't just randomly make applications to a bunch of universities without really thinking about, okay, am I actually going to be able to go there if I get in, right? Because like I said, affordability is also a very important consideration. So I basically shortlisted based on what I wanted to study, ranking, and scholarships. These are like my three main criteria. And these criteria might change for people. Like I think first thing to do is identifying your criteria and then shortlisting. So once you have that shortlist, obviously write your SOPs. And I always say, like, whenever you want to write your SOPs, you have to try and make a list of all of like your achievements
Mhm.
and what you learned from them. And that's really important. What you learned from them is really important because people don't just want to see what you've done, but what you think you've gained from it and how you can apply it in your future life. And
Mhm.
also always talk about what you want to do when you get to the university in terms of like any research activities that might interest you. Talk about any professors that, you know, you've read about over there that you might want to get in touch with for research internships or some sort of, you know, collaboration. Just show that you're really interested and make it very specific to the university you're applying to. So, and then there's also other financial support that you can apply for before you leave India, like in addition to any scholarships you might have, because at undergrad level, there's not a lot of full scholarships that you can get, as you might get for a master's or a PhD, right? So in
Mhm.
addition to scholarships, you can even try and apply for student loans, which are offered by banks in India, for example, by the State Bank of India. So if you really wanted to go for undergrad, then this is the kind of combination of financial support you can have: scholarships, bank loan. But I would always, you know, focus on your main thing, which is what you want to study, why you want to study, because that's more important than anything else. In terms of applying for PhDs, you know, it's very different than undergrad because you're applying for a specific project with a specific supervisor. There's a there's a website called findaphd.com, which outlines, like, has basically a list of all the PhD vacancies in UK and Europe. And you can literally go to this website, and basically there's filters that you can apply for your field. And you can see the description of the PhD project, who is supervising it, whether it has funding for international students or not. And the best thing to do, I think, in addition to finding PhDs in this way, is to do your own research and find professors at universities that you're interested in studying at. And once you find these professors, just emailing them with your CV and saying, hi, I'm really interested in your research. This is why I'm interested. I have experience in this, this, and this. Please find my CV attached, and I would love to have a Skype call with you to discuss more. And, this is obviously cold emailing them because, they don't know you. But this is how it starts, and it's not new. Like, they expect to get emails, and they do get a lot of emails from students from around the world with interest in their research. And a lot of the times they do reply, and you can have informal chats with professors. It's better than having email conversations, I think. It's more personable.
Definitely.
And I had several of these informal chats when I was applying for PhDs. And I didn't apply for a PhD with every single person I had a chat with. I definitely had more chats with people, and then I shortlisted based on, the fit with the supervisor, how my personality is, how theirs is, the type of project. Because sometimes in descriptions, the project might seem like something, and then when you actually talk to the supervisor, the kind of skills they need, the kind of experiments you might run, the programs you might have to use might be completely different. And so, like, basically, this is part of your research, right? In terms of which PhD do I want to do? This is your, like, data collection of basically what am I going to do. And then once you have that short list, just make a list of which PhDs you're applying to. And whenever you have these calls with the supervisors as well, make sure they know you're an international student, and make sure you ask them what sources of finances are available for you to apply to. So once they know that you're an international student, they can refer you to scholarships within the university that you might not find on the website, or that might have just come out, for example. It might be a completely new scheme. And then they can start to support you in your application for this financial support. And in addition to this, do your own research, look at the website for scholarships available for your country, and mention it to them that, okay, I've seen this scholarship, and this is something I can apply to for funding. So you're also showing that you've done a bit of research.
Yeah.
And then obviously apply. Same thing as I said earlier for SOPs, except now you have to talk more about research and why you're interested in that. And then there's an interview process that happens. Usually it's 2 interviews by the supervisor and then by some external professors within the university in that same department, but not necessarily supervising you when you get there. And then you usually get an offer for the PhD first, and then you find out about the financial support or scholarship later. So you're kind of, when you get the offer, you're kind of in an in-between phase where you don't know if you're actually going to end up there. And that's a really painful process because you don't know what's going to happen with your life, and you might get all these offers and then sometimes no financial offerings, or you might get offers with several scholarships, and then you have to choose with yourself about what you want to do. But that's generally the process that you follow, and you should start this process in September, October, latest November of the year before you want to go. So for example, if you want to start your PhD in September 2021, you have to start this process now. You have to start contacting people now for next year, because the scholarship deadlines will be like December, January. So
2020.
you have to start talking to professors now. So what was that?
I said the deadlines for the scholarships would be this year, December 2020, if you want to go in 2021.
Exactly. So you have to start the process quite early. And as you can imagine, if the deadlines for scholarships are then, you have to start building the relationship with your prospective supervisor at least a month or 2 in advance, and just start talking about the project and to shortlist for yourself as well. So that's kind of like a very short kind of overview of what the process is. I have a blog also which kind of outlines more in detail about the financial side of things, like how to get funding as an international student in the UK.
Yeah.
And I'll send that to Jo. Maybe she can share it as well with this video.
Yeah, I'll add it in the description of this video so that students can access that too.
Sure.
And with all this hard work of more than a year of finding the right
Yeah.
match of the professor and the funding and everything, once you finally joined the PhD program, what were your expectations from the program? What were you looking forward to in the PhD program? And I think it's
Yeah.
been almost a year now, or more than a year, right?
It's been
So,
just over a year, yeah.
yeah, so how much of those expectations do you feel have been fulfilled? And yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I think my expectations weren't like anything kind of specific because I'd worked in ISC and I'd worked with PhD students like yourself, and I kind of knew like what the day-to-day of a PhD student looks like, you know, how flexible it is, how it's basically you manage your own time. You know, there's no like hard supervision, there's no kind of micromanagement. It's about you managing your time, about you staying motivated. I think that's the hardest part as a PhD student, right? Like finding your own structure and
Yeah.
and building your own timetable and making sure your work is done on time. And who decides like what is on time? Who decides what you need to get done? It's only yourself. So managing yourself, I think, is the biggest challenge as a PhD student. And I think I kind of knew that because as a research assistant, I was kind of in the same position as a PhD student,
Yeah.
you know, like I kind of, yeah, so I kind of had that experience already. So that wasn't a shock to me. But I think you have more responsibility as a PhD student to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a PhD student, I feel like you have more responsibility because you're like bounded by time. You have a scholarship for a certain number of years. I have my scholarship for 3 years, and I've now finished a year of it, so I have 2 more years to finish my PhD. So you have that pressure, but also the responsibility of like, you know, doing well. Imperial is a top 10 university, so there's definitely that pressure and the competition between students in the department. And also just generally you feel that kind of need that you have to perform well. And of course, if you're being funded by your supervisor, there's that responsibility you have towards them to kind of be productive and to be able to like make it worthwhile for them as well. So I think I didn't have anything that I didn't experience anything that I was surprised or shocked by. It was more that I had already experienced it, but now it's to a greater level or to a greater intensity almost.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Then it was good that you had that research stint and you sort of,
Yeah.
got the feel for what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And
For
now
sure.
let's switch gears a little bit and talk about more about the research that you're doing as a PhD scholar. So tell
Yeah.
us about your PhD project and the kind of research it involves and what kind of innovations are you trying to make?
Sure. So essentially, my PhD is looking at developing a wearable technology to precisely dose antimicrobials. So these are antibiotics that are used in critical care. And right now, what happens is when somebody comes into critical care,
Mm-hmm.
you basically have to prescribe them antibiotics if they have an infection.
Yeah.
And essentially, you don't monitor how they're metabolizing the drug. You just give them like a one standard dose, and it's a one size fits all model. Whereas in critical care, what happens is patients come in and they metabolize drugs at different rates. And so it's called pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. And so their PK/PD levels are very different between patients. So that variability gives rise to either patients being overdosed or underdosed. So when
Okay.
they're overdosed, it leads to toxicity. When they're underdosed, the infection is not being cleared. And so there's actually a need to monitor drugs in real time in patients, specifically in critical care. Part of the project that I'm working on right now is actually part of this bigger project of precision dosing of antimicrobials. It's actually looking at the infection level of patients in real time. So specifically looking at sepsis,
Okay.
which is misdiagnosed a lot of the times when patients come into critical care with infections.
Mm-hmm.
Sepsis has very high mortality, and if it is diagnosed at a later stage, it's extremely difficult to revive the patient. And so if it's diagnosed at an earlier stage, you can then prescribe antibiotics and monitor the patient and make sure that, you know, they have a greater chance to serve for lactate, which is a biomarker for sepsis. And so when you monitor lactate in real time using the same wearable technology platform, you can actually see how the patient is responding to the antibiotics that are being prescribed. Because the greater the lactate levels, the more infection is present, the more severe the infection in the patient.
Mm-hmm.
And so combining both the technology that we can use to sense antibiotics and the technology that we can use to sense biomarkers of infection, we can then create a machine learning model. And this is something that's, we are looking at to do in the future. You can create a machine learning model to then precisely dose antibiotics in real time using both sensor data, essentially. And so I'm looking at both the antibiotic sensing and both the infection biomarker sensing as well.
Great. So it sounds really exciting and a very, very useful technology that that's sort of also impending, because we already are facing all these issues and we need solutions like that. But when you say wearable, how would it go on the patient's body? Would it be like a wraparound around your biceps or somewhere on your arm? Or
Yeah, so it's basically a microneedle patch. So microneedles are very tiny needles. They're about 1 millimeter in height. They don't penetrate your skin, so they don't pierce your skin, rather. But they are, when you place a microneedle patch on your arm, on your forearm, for example, and you apply enough pressure, it comes into contact with interstitial fluid, and that's the fluid underneath your skin. That's the extracellular fluid. And so it's been reported in literature that the concentrations of analytes in blood plasma is almost the same as the concentration of analytes in an interstitial fluid. There's a bit of a time lag of about 5 to 10 minutes between the two. And so in a non-invasive way, we can then begin to measure analytes in interstitial fluid without needing to penetrate the skin. And so it is literally a wearable patch. We're still kind of figuring out how it would sit on the skin in, for example, a commercial product.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we have a patented technology for the microneedle patch.
Okay. And I think I can think of like so many things that you would have to take care of, as in whether it should be waterproof. So if someone has to bathe, it should stay, and then how long can it stay? And it itself should not get infected because of being in contact with the skin. So good luck with solving all these challenges, and I hope we see technology out soon that sort of helps patients in critical care. And now I'm going to switch gears again a little and go back to, you've talked about why networking is important and how things work in this era, and being part of a good professional network becomes really, really crucial. How do you maintain this professional network? How do you sort of get to the right places at the right time or get in touch with the right people? Is there, some particular exercise that people could also do and sort of become more active in their professional networks?
I think just attending conferences. A lot of these conferences are now online, so you don't have to travel. Actually making the effort when you're at a conference to speak to people, like during the breaks, just to introduce yourself and just to, show that you're interested in their work as well. And then following up on LinkedIn, staying connected on LinkedIn, I think is really important, because then you have them, for however long they're on LinkedIn, you can always message them. Yeah, and then I guess just being on the lookout for events, like around your kind of geographic area that you might be able to attend in person. Joining lots of groups on LinkedIn or otherwise, which are focused on your field of work. So for us, it would be biotech. But yeah, just being proactive. I think it's difficult to kind of put down concrete things you can do, but just being proactive in knowing what's happening in the world in terms of initiatives, and then seeing how you can also take part.
Great. And I think one of my last questions would be that you've talked about how a PhD is self-monitored and you have to take care of everything and set your own deadlines and things like that. And there's almost every day there's just a lot to do. So it can also be really stressful. And we also know about the mental health issues that are rampant in research. So have you personally ever been depressed or sad or disappointed? Most of the times I feel depressed is a pretty heavy word, and sometimes it's just used out of place. So you can choose how you would like to express that. But have you faced such situations in your research career that you've had?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you address them? Or if you haven't faced them, then what is it that keeps you upbeat and motivated all the time?
Sure. I think this is a really important discussion to have because there's a lot of mental health issues in PhD students. And it's kind of inevitable, I think, given that it is a high stress environment, like you said. And I mean, there's definitely been a lot of days where I felt down or low, questioned my own abilities. And it's only a result of, the kind of expectations I think we set for ourselves. The fact that we're already doing a PhD means that we have very high expectations of ourselves. The fact that we're doing PhDs at, amazing institutes is another kind of layer to that expectation thing. And I think whenever I feel like that, I just tend to now give myself space. Sometimes productivity isn't measured in the quality or the positiveness of your results. Sometimes productivity is measured in how much effort you put into something. And I think that's something I've learned in the first year of my PhD, because you can get easily bogged down by if results don't come out the way you want them to, or you can get bogged down by
Definitely.
not doing enough in a day. And I always feel like I never do enough. Huh? What was
I
that?
said definitely.
What did you say?
I said
Yeah, and
definitely.
I always feel like I never do enough in a day, even though I'm constantly running around doing stuff. And I think that's just how I see myself, and in a way that pushes me to do more and more. But I've now, like, more recently decided that if I ever feel like I'm not doing enough, or if I feel like, I'm not being productive enough, or I'm not, basically just kind of questioning your research and your capabilities, I literally just take like an hour off, and I'm like, I just kind of meditate, or I will speak to my family, and just, you have to find a way that allows you to kind of come back onto track. If you feel like your mental, whether that's speaking to your family, whether that's meditating, whether that's, I don't know, playing with your pet or anything like that. So yeah, I definitely have had like days or weeks even where I felt like that. Um, and and talking to peers also really helps, because I feel like it's such a prevalent issue that if you just talk to somebody who's also doing a PhD, and
Mhm.
like just share that, oh my god,
Yeah,
like I don't have, like, I feel like I don't have data, I feel like the experiments I'm doing aren't working, or I feel like I'm doing something wrong, something's not right. Just speak to people, speak to your supervisor as well. Like, I've spoken to my supervisor about these issues. I've been completely open with the way I feel with about my research with him, and it's definitely like more of kind of a barrier you have to break. But I think it's really important to do that because it kind of builds a good relationship with your supervisor as well.
yeah.
But yeah, I think giving yourself time off is really important. It's something that I feel like as PhD students we don't do because there's so much to do, and it always feels like we're running on a treadmill at 100 miles per hour, and we can never stop because there's no time. So just taking some
Yeah.
time off when you feel like your mental health is slipping is really important, and finding what you need to calm down.
I agree with the comment on talking to your PhD supervisor. So, especially in the first year, I felt that I was struggling a lot, both with the coursework and the research, and it was all so new to me. And just talking to my supervisor and telling him that, these are the experiences that I'm having, and he was pretty open in discussing them and sharing his own experiences. And as you said, talking to other researchers helps you know that, oh, everybody goes through it. It's not something
Yeah,
that's new. It's only something that I have to shove off my shoulders and get back to work with a fresh mind. So taking a break also helps.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The
Yeah, I feel like
last.
everybody goes through it, like you said. Like, it's like
Yeah.
really rare that PhD students will have, like, like even a month without being low. Like, it's
Yeah,
just
but
a constant roller coaster.
yes. But some people should also not take it as a fact that it's a very, very stressful, profile that one should just not consider because it's stressful. I think every profile
Yeah,
today is stressful, and it's only a matter of how you learn to sort of handle it over time. And being communicative is one of the best skills that I thought worked for me.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if it gets really bad, like, you know, there's obviously organizations out there that you can speak to who are like completely outside of your professional kind of network, you know, like, I don't know, like mental health organizations or even your doctor. Like it's not a big deal to like just speak. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to go to like a psychiatrist or a therapist. You can just speak. You can just verbalize what you're feeling. And I think that's recognition is the first aspect of dealing with any kind of mental health issue, whether that's just feeling low or whether that's, you know, something like imposter syndrome, because I know imposter syndrome is like massive in the PhD and researching community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So for all the young heads listening to us, I hope you're listening to what Saylee and me are trying to communicate and you practice it if you are stuck in such situations. Sally, another thing that's specific or peculiar about researchers is that they have some other passions other than their research work that they really care about. And let's talk about things that are close to your heart, except for the research that you're doing on antimicrobial resistance. And
Mm-hmm.
how do you sort of take steps to, follow those passions as well, with all this happening in a PhD life?
Yeah. I think when you want to find time for something, you find time for it. Like, you know, it's like finding time for your family or whatever that you're interested in doing. For me, I think it's definitely like been like since I came here, like exploring London, because it's such an amazing opportunity to be living in London in my early 20s. Finding time to travel. Recently, I went to Croatia with my brother. He's the closest family I have to me here in Europe, so it's really important to me that I stay in touch with him. I think going back home as well is really important to me because it grounds me and it kind of energizes me and reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing. And yeah, I think I love working with people, which is why I love events organization. So that's something I was doing with the GapSummit. I love animals, and I also love, there's this scheme here in the UK where I can't have a dog myself, but I generally, it definitely makes my mental health very positive and happy. It makes me really happy to be able to do that. So I guess just having fun is so important, because if you're just working, then, you know, it's nothing is energizing you to work.
Thanks a lot, Saylee, for all your insightful comments and sharing all the experiences that you've had and the tips that you have for people out there who might be planning to have such research careers as ours. Now I'm going to go to a fun part of the interview, which is a rapid fire round. So you have to be quick, you have to be witty, and let's see how that goes. And it's just a few questions, and I'm going to read them out so that I don't mess it up. So the first question is, do you prefer working during the day or working at night?
Day.
But I do know that you have to pull so many night outs to sort
Yeah,
of.
I don't like doing it. Sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
But not that often.
Mm-hmm. So, is there anything that you think you could have done differently in the first year of the PhD program that you have experienced?
I think I had a lot of self-doubt at the start because I was so new to everything. And I completely resonate with you when you said that as well during PhD first year. And I think I didn't need to have that self-doubt to the level that I had it, because it can be detrimental, like to your mental health. But also I think it makes you less productive because you're constantly thinking that maybe you aren't a good fit for the role. And I think I wish that I could just, you know, shove those thoughts away and just focus on learning.
I can completely identify with you on this. So that's exactly the sort of thing I went through in my first year. Okay, what do you think is the most common myth about researchers?
The fact that, you know, we don't know how to have fun. I think it's perfectly like normal to have like, you know, a good kind of research life. A lot of people think that, you know, like researchers, all they do is work and stay in the lab, etc. But I think researchers should, and they do have balanced lives. It's definitely difficult to manage, but I feel like, you know, we can be fun people. We know how to like if anything, it makes us more efficient at managing our lives, and we do stuff outside the lab that makes us like, you know, diverse and multifaceted individuals. Like research isn't everything. It's very important, but it's a part of our lives.
So what are your stress busters? Like 2 or 3 of them.
What are my stress busters?
Yes.
Walking dogs, speaking to my family, having Skype calls with them, and going out and exploring London with my friends and doing something new, going to the park, going to a new restaurant, anything like that. Just like getting myself out of the house, out of the lab, dressing up nice, just going somewhere, you know, taking my mind off of whatever is bothering me.
My next question is, how many hours do you work daily on an average?
It just depends. Do you mean on PhD work or like just work in general?
Everything that you do is sort of your towards your professional growth, right? So
Yeah.
on an average on a day, how many
Sure.
hours?
Yeah, I think for me, it just depends on the time of the year. Because currently, I'm also doing a part-time role at university where I am supporting the arrival. So I work anywhere between like 10 to 12 hours a day, sometimes even more. Especially with GapSummit that was happening, I was working at like the later end of that spectrum, if not more. But on a more general kind of PhD lifestyle, I probably work about 10 hours a day. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Define your PhD experience that you've had till now, or you could define your research experience that you have till now in 3 words, or like a phrase of 3 words or so. You could
Wow,
use
that's
3
difficult.
individual words, or you could have
Okay.
a short phrase.
Okay, I'll do the 3 words. Innovative, collaborative, and inspiring.
Great. Thank you so much, Saylee, for taking out the time I know how busy your schedule is, so thanks a lot for taking out the time and sitting down with me for this chat. I hope the messages and the information that we are trying to communicate to all the young students out there and the common masses about the field of research, I hope our thoughts resonate with them as well. Do you have any parting thoughts?
I would just say do research, kids. It's fun. And of course, like I'm sure you can get in touch with Navjot if you have any follow-up questions for her or for myself. And yeah, I hope to meet you in some part of the world as researchers.
That's really sweet. Saylee also has an Instagram handle for her PhD life, and I'll also put that in the link for the description. I'll also provide that link in the description for this video, so that if people directly have some questions, they could get in touch with you, or they talk to me, and I'll let you know if they have any questions. Take care, Saylee. Thanks a lot again. Bye-bye then.
Sure. All right. Thanks. Bye.